Welcome to the Smarter Science of Slim, the scientifically proven program where you eat more and exercise less to burn fat and boost health.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hello everyone, this is Carrie Brown and I'm here in Seattle once more in a very cold studio, once again, with Mr. Jonathan Bailor.
Woohoo! What's up, Carrie?
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I am all prepared because I'm excited from our last recording session where you asked me very good, deep, inquisitive questions, and I know that spawned other questions, and we've since heard from listeners that they're excited to hear the answer to those questions. So,
well, I am. Explain yourself, man.
Well, why don't you give the listeners a bit of context on where we're coming from and where we're going now?
So last week we talked about what happened when you ate a piece of protein physiologically, and what happened when you ate fat, and what happened when you ate carbohydrate. And you explained that all, and that was all very cool. But it left me with the question, well, actually it left me with several, but my most burning question was, why, if fat is the easiest to convert into body fat, why is fat not the enemy? Why is sugar the enemy? Because that on the surface doesn't make sense to me.
When we say sugar, so there's a couple high-level points. So when we say sugar is the enemy, we're talking about processed sugar that you put into your mouth, right? Generally speaking, not like blood, like having glucose circulating in your bloodstream is not a bad thing. When you eat a vegetable, for example, it is metabolized, a vegetable, anything that has carbohydrate in it, right? Spinach. You eat spinach. We love spinach. Spinach is the cornerstone of a sane lifestyle. Not spinach, but non-starchy vegetables. And some percentage of that spinach leaves your stomach as sugar, glucose. So you need some. If you ate no glucose, your body would synthesize glucose from protein because your brain needs it. Like, you need glucose. What you don't need are unnatural, refined, nutrient-poor sources of concentrated sugar, such as table sugar, soda, things like that. You also don't need a lot of starch, which is a concentrated source of carbohydrate, which is then, of course, converted into sugar into your body. So sugary foods, sugar and starch is the enemy. Sugar in your bloodstream, aka glucose, not the enemy, because whole food, even whole food fats like avocados have some carbohydrate in them. Fruits have carbohydrate in them. Vegetables have carbohydrate in them. That's going to raise your blood sugar. That's okay. That's fine. Now, fat. Fat is not the enemy, even though it is efficient, because, first of all, we must eat fat. Like, there is such thing as an essential fatty acid, meaning that if we don't eat it, we get sick.
Okay.
We need fat. Fat is a structural component of our body. Fat is required for the production of hormones. Fat is required for the production of cells. There's a bunch of vitamins such as vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K that the body can't even use unless we have fat. Like, if you want to think about, actually, this, I've never thought about it this way, this may be helpful. We talked last week about protein is not a fuel source. It's a structural component. So imagine a spectrum in your mind. On the left side is structural component, and protein is sitting on that end. On the other end of the spectrum is fuel source or energy source. That's where glucose is. Like, glucose is a pure energy. It's just energy, nothing. It's just energy. Fat is right in the middle, where it's kind of a structural component. Like, it's a huge part of our cell walls, for example. And it can also be used for energy. So for the same reasons that we need to eat protein, because our body is protein. Our body is protein and fat. So eat what you are. It helps you to maintain that. Men who don't eat enough fat have extremely low testosterone levels. Women who don't eat enough fat have extremely low estrogen levels. Like, it's very important for your body to function. It lubricates things, it insulates things. It's an important structural thing.
So, before you keep going, so when we were talking last week about eating 300 calories of protein and fat and carbohydrate, we were talking about that being in excess to our needs.
Yeah, to be clear, you never store fat if you are not. Fat is only stored when you have more energy than you need right then.
But that example was your 300 calorie example from last week was talking about excess.
Yes.
When you actually eat fat, some of that is going to be trafficked off to help create hormones and to make up cell walls and to do all this other structural, functional stuff. Only last week's example was only talking about what happens to the excess.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there was another thing we said last week, which is really important, which is your body is always it's always going to store some fat. Unless you're in the process of running a marathon, you will consume more calories in 5 minutes than you will burn in the 5 minutes it took you to consume them.
Unless it's celery.
Or is
that a myth?
No. That is actually true. Like something like celery, and that's a great idea, right? Because if you were to eat pure fiber, you would just burn calories because your body is trying to take fiber and it's trying to do something with it. So it's like, it's basically, your stomach walls are like moving, saying like, do something with this. It's trying to break it down. Enzymes are trying to break it down. Nothing happens. And then it eventually just passes out of your body. But that was metabolically costly to try to do that. So 300 calories in excess. What this shows us a couple things. If you eat fat, one, you don't eat fat in isolation. Very few people just sit down and say, I'm going to take a shot of olive oil right now. Right? Like it's not how most people I know eat. Even nuts are not pure fat. Right. Even an egg yolk is not pure fat. Like you don't just sit down and eat fat. That's important to note because it is possible to sit down and eat pure protein, essentially. Tuna fish is 90% protein.
And there are people that, because it has been recommended in various places, that actually eat coconut oil by the spoonful.
Yeah.
But that's not something that you would ever recommend.
Correct. And you will also notice that it is very difficult to consistently overeat pure fat. So if you did eat pure fat, it's not very palatable. It's not very tasty to eat fat by itself. So you would just naturally stop eating it because it doesn't reinforce that behavior. Fat is only overeaten when it is combined with other insane substances. Let me give you a very easy example. Butter, eating a stick of butter is disgusting. Take that same stick of butter and put it over top of a baked potato. It is very easy to eat that stick of butter now.
Yes. I used to like eating bread with my butter.
But hold on, getting back to the story at hand. So if you eat 300 calories of pure fat, you are going to store more of it as fat. You are, bottom line. However, that doesn't mean, as we talked about last week, that you will become fatter over time. Because now we have to look deeper, right? This is the problem. Like mainstream nutrition, in quotations, that we hear would stop thinking at that point. They'd be like, 300 calories of fat, 292 get stored as fat, therefore fat is fattening. False. The act of eating fat and storing, if you were to store 292 calories as fat, this is why the homeostatic regulation of weight and the set point is so important. In the model where the body is dumb and the body is just stupid, it's like, oh, I just ate 300 calories of fat, excess fat, I stored 292 of them, and nothing happens. Like that's just the end of it. But the body is smart. The body tries to balance us out, remember. So if you store 292 calories worth of fat, I don't care if it's coming from fat or if it's coming from carbohydrate or it's coming from protein, your body's like, hey, I've got 292 more calories of fat. So I'm going to make your appetite, I'm going to drop your appetite and I'm going to raise your base metabolic rate to maintain homeostasis and to maintain. So if that's more fat than your body thinks you should be storing, you will just be less hungry later in the day. And for example, you may just burn more energy through non-activity exercise thermogenesis, or what's called NEAT, or involuntary muscle movements. So that's the popping up a level. Even if fat is more efficiently stored as body fat, if we understand that our body is like an accountant and says, okay, I've stored 500 calories as fat. Well, I'm going to drive your appetite. I'm going to help you to not crave 500 additional calories later in the day, because I know that I have a reserve of 500 calories that I've stored. So while, yes, fat can be stored more efficiently as fat, if we store more fat, our body will just react by burning more calories. And that, again, it's not a quantity problem. It's always a quality problem. Does that make any sense at all?
Kind of.
Carrie's like, I'm not sold. So what doesn't make sense?
Well, no, that all makes sense. But then I go back to the carbohydrate thing, which is then why does carbohydrate or starches and sugars do cause us to put on weight? So, because if our body has this homeostasis thing going on and it wants to keep us where we're at, but if we overeat starches and sugars, we do put on weight.
So when you overeat starches and sugars, in our culture, people who eat a lot of starches and sugars are not eating a lot of sweet potatoes. They're eating a lot of processed foods. It just so happens that the vast majority of processed foods are starches and sweeteners. So when you eat processed garbage, you cause a bunch of other things to happen completely independent of fat storage, right? Storing excess fat is not a function of you consuming too many calories, because your body should balance that out. Storing too much fat is a function of your body losing its ability to balance you out. Now, when you eat processed garbage, which is by and large starches and sweets, three things happen. First and foremost, you get inflammation in your brain. And that causes your brain to not do the balancing appropriately that I just described it should do. Your hypothalamus becomes inflamed. And things like leptin, which would normally say, hey, I've got some extra fat I'm storing, maybe because I just ate some fat and I stored it as fat, so burn more calories or make me less hungry later. Those signals don't happen appropriately. The next thing that happens is you damage your gut bacteria. So your second brain, aka your gut, also can't respond appropriately. Finally, you cause a bunch of hormonal chaos. We all know that carbohydrate stimulates insulin production. We talked about that last week, that when you eat carbohydrate, for it to get to your fat cells, you got to have insulin. But if you overproduce insulin, your body just can't burn fat, because your body detects insulin as a signal that it shouldn't burn fat. This is also why eating a lot of protein can sometimes cause, again, protein would cause an insulin response, because protein gets converted into glucose, which then gets stored as fat. So when we understand that this is not about overeating, it's not about eating too many calories and that causes us to store fat, it's about eating foods, or let's not call them foods, let's call them edible products that break down our body's ability to respond to more calories in with a compensatory increase in more calories out. That's what causes obesity. And it's not, hopefully this doesn't make anyone's brain explode. But for example, there are civilizations, example that is used a lot in the paleo community is called the Catawbans. There's a civilization known as the Catawbans that get about 90% of their calories from carbohydrate. But they're getting those calories from unrefined, whole foods like roots and tubers and potatoes, and that's what they eat. And they're a very lean and functional people. That's why a SANE lifestyle is not a low carbohydrate diet. We've talked about how you could have a sweeter SANE lifestyle, which could be a little bit heavier in carbohydrate, or you could have a more savory SANE lifestyle, which is a little bit higher in fat. Because as long as you're eating sane, satisfying, unaggressive, nutritious, and mostly inefficient foods, your body will work to balance your caloric balance out, even if the foods you're eating are more readily stored as fat.
So that's why if you focus on quantity, none of this actually makes sense. It only makes sense if you focus on the quality, because it's the quality that makes the difference.
The quality is what determines how your body reacts to the quantity of food you eat, if that makes sense. If you eat 300 calories of garbage, and there's all kinds of garbage, right? There's fat that's garbage, there's carbohydrate that's garbage, and there's protein that's garbage, right? Pink slime is garbage protein. Trans fats are garbage fats, and high fructose corn syrup is garbage carbohydrate. Those things break your body in any quantity, just like smoking destroys your lungs in any quantity. Obviously, the more you smoke, the more damage you get. And that's why smoking less is actually better for you than smoking more, but it doesn't make it good for you. And eating less crap, like just a caloric restriction, traditional Western diet, would be better for you than eating a lot of a crappy Western diet, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. It just means it's less bad for you. The quality of the food we eat determines, remember, we said we're always storing or burning fat. The quality of the food we eat determines if when we eat food, which will always be in excess of the quantity of calories we need right in that moment, the quality of the food we eat will determine if we then take that food, we're going to store it as fat. I don't care how much, and if you eat pure protein, like protein's a good, Jonathan, why don't we eat a 100% protein diet then? The reason we don't eat a 100% protein diet is you need energy. And protein is not a good source of energy. So you eat 2,000 calories worth of protein and your body is just going to be hungry and it's going to tell you to keep eating and keep eating and keep eating because it doesn't have enough energy.
But we also need, you were explaining that we also need fats for other reasons as well.
Yes,
we need fats structurally as well.
But the macro point is that when you eat food, you are going to store fat. Bottom line. You will also then burn that fat off naturally and in proportion to the amount of fat you stored if your body is healthy. That is what it is designed to do. So if you were to store fat and it originally entered your mouth as fat, or it originally entered your mouth as protein, or it originally entered your mouth as carbohydrate, doesn't matter. It's being stored as fat. But if you're hormonally dysregulated, if your gut bacteria is destroyed, and if your brain's inflamed, your body will not be able to react to the storage of fat by burning fat. Eating fat doesn't make you fat. It's just another way to get calories into your body. And as long as you keep your body functioning properly, it will balance you out and take care of the rest.
So that's why it's all about quality, not quantity.
Exactly. When you just thinking the quantity model, like you said, you got it right, Carrie. As long as we're trapped by these calorie myths, this other stuff just doesn't make sense. And by other stuff, I mean proven biology. It's just, if you eat more food, your base metabolic rate increases. Fact. If you eat less food, your base metabolic rate decreases. Your body reacts to more in with more out, and to less in with less out. It's to the extent that that balance takes place with precision is a function of the quality of your diet. And if the quality of your diet is low, that balance doesn't happen well, and your set point goes up. If the quality of your diet is high, that balancing act happens appropriately, as it should, and you don't become overweight. Think of it like diabetes, right? If you eat too many glucose-containing foods, your body's ability to balance your blood sugar just gets burnt out. It's I cannot keep up with you. And then you get diabetes. And if you eat the improper quality of foods, your body's ability to balance out its fat stores automatically, it can't keep up with you, and you end up getting an elevated set point.
So that's why when people are, quite a lot of people can be confused about the fact they look at a SANE lifestyle and they say we're low carbers. We're actually not. We just choose to get our carbohydrates from the healthiest place, which is non-starchy vegetables.
We're always focused on quality. And so it's not even about saying protein, carbohydrate, and fat. It's about saying satiety, aggression, nutrition, and efficiency. And what are just the most delicious and most effective sources at giving us those things, as well as our essential vitamins and minerals that we need. And we pick from the food groups that best allow us to do that. And there are, to be very clear, you could eat a sane diet that is a bit higher in carbohydrate, a bit lower in carbohydrate, a bit higher in protein, a bit lower in protein. It's just about saying water, fiber, and protein. Those are the common denominators. Focus on those. And this is also why a sane lifestyle isn't a low carbohydrate lifestyle. A low carbohydrate lifestyle generally keeps carbohydrates under 50 grams per day. You will way exceed 50 grams of carbohydrate per day if you just eat the number of servings of vegetables we recommend in a sane lifestyle.
Got it.
And keep in mind too, Carrie, that
it's fascinating.
It's fascinating, and it's so counter to what we've been told. The body is brilliant. Like the body doesn't want us to be overweight. So I've said this already in the podcast, but I just want to say it again with more enthusiasm this time because it's so important. Even if you ate 300 calories of pure fat and 290 of them got stored as fat, once you're free from the calorie myths and you embrace the beauty that is your biology and how brilliant your body is, if you know that you have just stored more body fat, you then know that your body will do a couple things. It will suppress your appetite so that you don't eat as much later. It will increase the rate at which you unconsciously burn calories. That makes that 292 calories you just stored irrelevant. Because if you only stored 100 calories, your body would just make you hungrier sooner and burn fewer calories. You see what I'm saying? Like it's this brilliant system. And then you're like, well, then how could obesity ever exist if your body works that way? Obesity didn't exist historically.
When we ate
it didn't. Like you cannot, unless you try. Like you would have to try. I will make a challenge. If there's anybody right now who can eating non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense proteins first, and then complementing that with whole food fats and low fructose fruits, try to become chronically obese eating that way. Even if you try, you cannot. Because your body you will be uncomfortable. It will hurt to try to do that. That's why the rates of obesity were sub 3% about 100 years ago. There were some people who would become obese, but that was usually because these are individuals who had a genetic metabolic
where they didn't work for other reasons.
Exactly. So that it's not like 2/3 of us are lazy gluttons that can't control ourselves. It's 2/3 of us simply are not.
Our metabolisms have been overwhelmed.
They've been overwhelmed. And if you go into like any office or any school, it's not like there's 1/3 of the office that is eating brilliantly and there's 2/3 that are eating like crap. It's most everyone is eating like crap, except 1/3 of people seem to stay slim and 2/3 of people don't. So it's not that 1/3 of people who are maintaining their weight are somehow morally superior. It's just that they're genetically blessed. They're like the people who can smoke their whole life and not get lung cancer. That doesn't mean smoking isn't bad for you. Our bodies are designed to keep us slim. However, we can override that ability, just like our bodies are designed to keep us non-diabetic, but we can overwhelm that ability. So to simply answer your question, your initial question.
Waving his arms, people.
To simply answer your question, how can fat be such a critical component of a sane lifestyle if it is inefficient and very easy for your body to store as fat? Because just like it's easy for your body to store fat, it's also very easy for your body to burn fat. And your body is brilliant, and your body is designed to automatically balance the amount of fat it burns with the amount of fat it stores. What's up? Because I didn't actually plan this argument before the podcast, folks.
Bailor,
I was like, this is I gotta come with the energy here. So, how do you feel now, Carrie? Do you think I mean, I know you're my friend, so you're going to be nice to me, but do you think But did I?
Don't be so sure.
I'm going to actually just give a couple more plugs to, but no, before I go on my next thing. Yes, does that make sense?
It makes total sense to me. The bit that makes the most sense is that the piece we were missing is the quality, and that's what makes everything else make sense.
Yes. A couple other things.
Thank you.
My pleasure. A good example, just one concrete example, and then we got to wrap up for the week. I get carried away about these things.
Yes, you do.
Goodness sakes. There are also, I think it's really helpful to go back to that spectrum we verbally drew of structural component versus energy source, because there are types of fats which are really much more on that structural component side of things. The reason omega-3 fats are so celebrated is like they're really important for our body. You should think of them more like vitamin C.
So when we talk about healthy fats, those are the fats that are more the structural end versus the energy end.
Or they are just benign, meaning they're sources of calories and don't cause hormonal chaos, and they don't change our body's ability to respond to more calories in with more calories out. So there's, let's call them therapeutic fats. These are anti-inflammatory fats, which reduce inflammation. They help to heal us. They help us to absorb vitamins. These are things like omega-3 fats, monounsaturated fats. There are...
Give us some examples.
Omega-3 fats are the fats found in salmon, flax seeds, chia seeds, grass-fed beef. By and large, though, that's why people say eat seafood. That's why I say eat seafood, because that's going to be your primary source. Flax and chia also have them, but it's a less biologically available form called ALA versus EPA or DHA. Or DEA, excuse me. Blah, blah, blah. We're running out of time, folks. And then there are monounsaturated fats. These are why people say olive oil is so good for you, because it's high in monounsaturated fats.
But don't heat it.
Yeah, don't heat it. And also, if at all possible, eat olives, because we're about the whole food. And macadamia nuts. Macadamia nuts are actually way higher in monounsaturated fats than olives are. So if you're looking to just increase your intake of monounsaturated fats, macadamia nuts are delicious and they're the way to go. And then medium chain triglyceride or medium chain fats and short chain saturated fats, extremely good for you. They boost your metabolism. They help heal your gut flora. That's going to be found primarily in coconut. It's very hard to find medium chain triglycerides. They're not in a lot of food sources.
Go coconut!
Woo! And then you have things like saturated fats, healthy saturated fats. The saturated fats found, for example, in cocoa, found in egg yolks. These are not things that should make up. You shouldn't just like eat egg yolks for breakfast. You should probably eat the whole egg, but because you also need protein and other things. But those are going to be in the middle. And then on the other end of the spectrum are things like trans fats and foods that are just excessively high in omega-6 fats, like any processed food stuff, any commercially available food type, edible product, packaged things in boxes, things that don't need to be refrigerated, fast food, and then conventionally corn-fed livestock is going to be very high in a lot of these bad fats. That's why grass-fed beef is so important. Make sense?
I'm exhausted.
Whew. Well, folks.
I'm so cold. I think I need to run around the studio.
So, fat, extremely healthy, yes. So, this is actually cool, because if anyone's ever like, well, fat is fattening because it's more easy for your body to store fat as fat. That's true. But those people are assuming that the body is dumb, and the body is not dumb. The body is smart. So, even if you eat fat and you store more fat, your body will respond by suppressing your appetite and burning more fat, because your body is brilliant and you're not broken. You're beautiful. So keep that in mind. Woo!
Amen.
This week and every week after, remember, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon.
See ya.
Wait, don't stop listening yet.
You can get fabulous free SANE recipes over at carriebrown.com.
And don't forget your 100% free eating and exercise quick start program, as well as free, fun, daily tips delivered right into your inbox at bailorgroup.com. That's BAILOR group.com.